to select an agency for your influencer marketing purposes and efforts. What do you select? Why do you select them? What do you need? What ought you to be looking for? How do you avoid all of this going horribly and catastrophically wrong? Stay tuned. We're going to answer that question. Welcome to the Influencer Marketing Show. I am Joel.
I am Brad, and I'm a very confused Brad because I thought we were thinking out loud, but now we're not. And I don't know what my self-identity is.
We are now the Influencer Marketing Show for YouTube and podcast SEO purposes. And we will be referred to as such from hitherto. Why? Because that's actually what we're doing, is we are talking about influencer marketing, and thus it is the Influencer Marketing Show. And the powers that be in our organization have said thinking out loud has no SEO value, which we knew a long time ago and didn't care. And I don't know whether that's a badge of honor for us, that we're not going to bow to the Google powers that be, or it's really stupid because we're a marketing agency and we should have done that.
No, that's kind of how we roll. That's our story. That we don't have any marketing agency experience before getting involved with the Out Loud group. Here we are. No one knew anything about influencers when we started. Now we know a few things. And hopefully we can help you to learn a few things about how to select an agency today, right?
That is one of the things that we know, is what to look for. Because here's the thing, gang. We have been in this space long enough that we have seen agencies rise and agencies fall. We have had our share of brands come to us after they had a less than stellar experience with their previous agency. And again, that all sounds super pretentious, as if we're the gold standard in the space, but we do think that we do a reasonably good job.
So we're at least on the medal stand for the standard.
I think
maybe not the gold standard.
I think we've medaled. So the question is, the question is, what are the questions, right? Yes. I mean, what ought you to be asked? To quote, I believe it was Socrates who said, "He who would succeed must first begin by asking the right questions." We are here to help you ask the right questions. So, do you have a question?
Well, I think a natural place to start is, what's the network like for the agency that you're working with? So from a brand perspective, you kind of have two different choices in most cases. You can work with an influencer agency that specializes in your vertical. Mm-hmm. You could work with a beauty-only influencer agency, or you could work with an agency that's more general in nature. Do you have thoughts on when you would want to work with someone that's specialized, or when you would want to work with someone that's more generalized?
Sure, yeah, it is your product. If you sell beekeeping equipment, you want to have an apiarist influencer marketing agency. That is very important.
Very common too.
It's very common. Yeah. There are a lot of them, but that's what you're going to need. If, however, you have a product that has a little bit broader reach, you're going to care about the size of the network. Because here's what you don't want to do. You do not want to pay people to go find influencers for you. You should have employees doing that. If that's what the agency is bringing to the table, saying we're going to go work really hard and we're going to go find people, and they don't have a large network and they don't have a history with a bunch of creators, and they can't tell you where the landmines are because they've got that history, that's not a good agency for you. And I would say that's the case. Whether there are a whole lot of factors that are irrelevant. Make sure that they have a good network. Yep. Make sure that they've been in the space long enough to actually have a whole lot of history.
So you mentioned a word which I started using, which I think in this case we should define a little bit more, and that word is network.
Oh, so I thought you were going to say apiarist.
Well, we should talk about apiarist, but frankly, that's probably going to be the next video.
You're right.
So definitely stay tuned to the next one where we break down beekeeping. But in this one, let's start with breaking down what a network is, because actually, truth be told, if you're talking with most creators and you use the word network, a red flag, or at least a yellow flag, shooting up because of something called a MCN or multi-channel network. But so anyways, the way this is going way back in the annals of time, but the way YouTube initially started was saying, hey, instead of us having a sales division, let's kind of outsource that. So if you're Coca-Cola and you want to advertise with 100 channels, you can go to this multi-channel network to advertise on multiple channels. Very, very smart.
Right, and it's curated, and it's how do you get rid of the cat videos and all that, and actually get to real creators and run real advertising on premium channels, right? Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, so you're right. Network is not that in this context. Network is simply, do they have a large roster of creators that they have worked with over an extended amount of time and have a lot of history with? That's what I mean. However you want to call it, whatever you want to call that, make sure that they have that thing.
Yes. The other thing I would say is be careful about assuming that you want to work with a narrow band of creators. So you may be better served working with a specialized agency. But that said, people generally speaking see influencer be effective because of the trust between the host and the audience, and that doesn't only happen with one vertical. So if you're a gaming brand, you don't need to work with a gaming agency because there's lots of people who are playing games beyond who know gaming very well to be able to advocate for their audience outside of gaming only channels. And working with someone who's a little bit more generalist is going to be able to bring more adjacencies and a bigger opportunity inside of the market for you. So
Correct.
Something to consider there.
Yep. Okay. Next question that they should ask.
All right. I would say the next question is basically, what is the agency's approach to working with brands, right? So how do you go about running a successful influencer campaign? What is the process?
Yep. So there's some, and there isn't any right answer because it completely depends on what you need and what you might have a D2C product. This is your KPI is strictly sales, nothing else. Or it might be you need really, really highly creative, shareable content that come out of this, something that's buzzworthy, and your KPI is going to be earned media. Just answer that question beforehand. Do I want an agency that is highly flexible, might be more expensive on a per unit basis, whatever the unit is, but they're going to be super creative and they're going to come up with something interesting? Or do you want like a churn and burn kind of agency that's just going to crank out an enormous amount of content and you're measuring it on some very, very strict KPI sales or trials or what have you? Just ask the question beforehand and know which agency's which. No right answer there. Okay, next one. What is the agency's approach to creators? Why is that an important question?
Well, first, I think you need to recognize that anyone who wants to get involved in an influencer agency, you need to know that your goal is to get the best price, not to get the lowest price when working with creators. So when creators are talking, actually, let me back up. As humans, we communicate through a lot of different channels. I believe the number is 7% of the ways that we communicate are verbal. So people are tuned into that other 93%. And if you have an agency that has chiseled the creator down, they are going to be less excited to advocate for your brand than if you paid them a fair price, a market price, but maybe not the absolute lowest. And that's where you get to the best price, because at the end of the day, you want performance for the lowest possible rate. But if if you're just focused on the lowest possible rate, you may not be getting that performance. So I think it's really important to understand what is an agency's relationship with creators and to what extent do they view creators as true partners in this process. One of the red flags from our perspective as an agency is when a brand comes to us only wants to do things on a cost per acquisition basis, because that signals to the creator and therefore to us the brand doesn't value their voice in the upper funnel pieces of the puzzle. That's not to say that numbers can't work out for you to run a successful campaign based on a direct response only view of things, but it's to say that you're not coming into this respecting the creator and their audience. You're just saying, what's in it for me? What's my exact bottom line? And so I think when you're looking at an agency, you really want to make sure that they understand creators and you want to understand that they partner with creators in a way that treats them with respect. And that's going to work out for brands time after time in the long run. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me flip this to you. Let's talk about execution. So
you need to know about execution.
Yes.
You need to know, you need to ask. And here's something that we've seen. There are a lot of players in this space that have really, really, really competent senior level folks that can sell to you. You're a brand, you're a large brand, you have large budgets. They're going to bring their A game, and the decks will be beautiful and the concepts will be amazing. When it actually comes to executing on that campaign, who's doing the work? Who's interacting with creators? Because keep in mind, those people are going to be representing your brand, even though you've never met them before, or they don't work for you. They're still going to be representing your brand. Who's interacting with creators? What's their follow through like? Do they actually have the ability to execute? And is their execution when it comes to negotiation? Do they absolutely grind and use all sorts of weird power, used cars, mail, salesman tactics and all that? Because we've seen that. How do they execute? Like you need to know this, and you need to thoroughly examine it, and you need to really, really dig into who is going to be running my campaign. Because there is, unfortunately, especially the bigger the agency that you get, there is a potential very large difference from the people who sold you on their agency and the people who are actually going to be doing the work. I mean, frankly, and I would be asking, like, are they underpaid? Because the fact of the matter is, we get a lot of young folks in this space that they think the agency world is sexy. That's what they want to do. They've grown up on Instagram and YouTube.
Yep.
How great to go work in this field. And they are totally underpaid, and they know it. And now they're bitter and angry and resentful. And
they're representing your brand.
And they're representing your brand. Like, you need to dig into exactly how they execute, and frankly, philosophically, how's the agencies run? Because there's so many, we've seen so many where junior people are doing the lion's share of the work, and they are, in my opinion, significantly underpaid. They're adding more value than what they're getting compensated for, and there are companies who take advantage of the fact that people want to work in a sexy industry, frankly, Hollywood works on that principle.
They do. I mean, we see plenty of influencer agencies going out there and throwing big parties with creators and just trying to get you to buy into the buzz and the sex and the sizzle around the agency. And at the end of the day, that's not what builds a brand in the long run, particularly for an agency for your brand. I did want to add in two what I consider to be small hacks in terms of how do you figure out if an agency is able to execute. And here's what I would propose. Number one is identify how long the agency partner has worked with brands. Because guess what? Brands are smart and sophisticated folks. And if they've been working with an agency for years, that probably means something in the influencer space. So that's one thing. And the second thing I would do is talk with people at the brand about the agency. Get references. If an agency is not willing to share references with you, that should be a huge red flag for you. Yes, listen to what your agency partners have to say, but more importantly, I'd listen to what their clients have to say and understand 100%. The depth of that relationship.
100%.
So I mentioned something too, which I know you and I talk about a lot, which I mentioned long term. So how should a brand think about trying to suss out if this should be if an agency partner is right for them, if they're a short term approach to influencer or a long term approach to influencer marketing?
Oh, okay, good. One, it's obviously depends on the product, it depends on the brand, etc.
Yep.
If you are a movie studio and you have something around a release, you can be much more particular about who you select for this project versus that project with very little
Truly
consequence.
A one-off.
Right, it really is a one-off thing. If, however, you are wanting to build a brand long term, when you're bringing on an agency, you are bringing on years of relationships. That's the thing that you're paying for. Like, yes, it's the execution. Yes, it's someone to do the work that you don't have staffing for. That's fine. That's not the main value. The main value is you are tapping into years of goodwill and relationships. And so, look, our recommendation is this is a space with what you're ultimately trying to get is, yes, sales, but by what avenue are you trying to get sales? You're trying to get sales through endorsement and social credibility. Social credibility is only going to come through long-term relationships. You've got to be in it for the long term, right? And when we get inbound emails where it's like, hey, we've got this product launch and we want creators to, can you give us a list of creators that would be willing to recommend this? It's like, no, I can't, because they've never talked to you. They've never experienced your product. There's zero interaction. And if you're coming at this from launch, you fundamentally don't understand what you're doing here. What you need to come in here to do is get them involved on the front end in a really, really meaningful way. You've got to open up the doors to whatever your product is, whatever your service is, and actually let them buy in. Like, so it's going to be product specific. This is a community. Like any community, you need to earn the right to be there, and you need to earn your voice, okay? You don't walk into a random group of strangers and all of a sudden start pontificating and expecting them to believe what you believe. You've got to earn the right to be there. This is no different. All right. And we get a lot of this. We want to test with you guys. We want to see. If we test And here's this is the awesome line. We've got unlimited budget for whatever works. We just want to test. We've got unlimited budget for whatever. Of course, you have unlimited budget for whatever works. Everybody has unlimited budget for whatever works. Like, that's, if I can pay $1 and get $1.50 back, yes, that runway is unlimited. Like, we all know that.
Yes.
Stop using that as a hook. We've heard it for 15 years.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's triggering. Right. It's triggering a little bit for Joel and for me.
But that said, all right. When should you do a test with an agency? How do you structure that test? What ought it to look like?
Yeah, you should do a test with an agency, right? I mean, we say all the time, like, hey, let's go out and grab a drink before we get married. Do the same thing with an agency, but do it in an intelligent way, right? As you mentioned, if you're a meaningful brand, you're going to be looking for a long-term agency partner that's going to be able to add value for you and your shareholders for a long period of time. And so start with something that's going to allow you to learn, and it's going to allow you to separate signal from noise. And from a practical perspective,
big question coming. How much does a brand need to spend to actually separate signal from noise? Because I got $7 burning a hole in my pocket right now.
Yes. I mean, if you're at $750, you're in good shape. No, where we'd recommend a brand start out is $100K, and you could start out a little bit smaller than that. I think that should be considered a good estimate. But the reason for that is we've been doing this a long time, and we can't guarantee any individual influencer is going to be successful. But we feel really good about running with a portfolio of creators for you as a brand. So this works on the upside and the downside. If you absolutely crush it with, you choose 2 or 3 creators and you spend 20 grand, and then you're ramping up your spend very significantly. It's like, no, that you're overinflating what you're going to be able to deliver because you didn't have a true test and you had a false positive. So now when you're really investing the dollars, you're gonna look like you don't know what you're doing, and we're gonna look bad when you're trying to ramp up to spend $250,000 and $1 million, whatever the number is, because it's not going to be as effective as you should. And similarly, you don't want to throw out a very good marketing channel that's high growth and fantastic for brand building because you chose a few creators where it didn't work and you didn't give it enough tests. So give it a thorough test. Make sure you're really thoughtful about what you're doing with the influencer. And you should really look to your agency partner to be able to give you an honest answer. And if you ever get the suspicion that, hey, they're just trying to maximize the dollars that you're spending with them as part of this test, that should be a pretty big red flag for you as well.
Yep. So listen, that's our list. We hope it's helpful. There's a whole lot more that we could talk about, honestly, on just about any topic. However, we're going to cut it off there. Thanks for tuning into the
oh gosh, I can't even say it. The Influencer Marketing Show. Woo!
Thanks for tuning in to the Influencer Marketing Show for YouTube and SEO podcast purposes.
Yes.
and we'll see you next week. Follow us on social. We appreciate you.